All right, well, good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Erickson-Kulas. I'm the Director of Programs and Operations here at the Michelson 20mm Foundation. Really excited to have you here for this webinar where we'll be discussing our upcoming Open Educational Resources Spark Grant cycle. And I'm joined by my colleague, Kayla Nagel. I'll let you introduce yourself, Kayla.
Hi, my name is Kayla Nagel. I'm the Open Educational Resource Program Manager here at the Michelson 20 Million Minds Foundation, and I am so excited to see all y'all here.
Awesome. So just a quick overview of our agenda for today. The first thing that we'll kind of go through is just an overview of the Michelson 20mm Foundation, a little bit about our history as an organization, how we got to where we are today. We'll then discuss our Spark Grant program and the specifics of that. We'll review what the application process actually entails for you all as potential applicants. We'll highlight some previous awardees, both in the OER space as well as in other areas of our work, so that you all have a better sense of the type of work that we're interested in supporting. And then we will, at the end, open it and turn to the Q&A in Zoom and answer questions. So if you do have questions throughout, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A. And again, we will either work to answer them during this time or at the tail end of this conversation, we'll go through all the questions that are in the Q&A. So the Michelson 20mm Foundation is funded and founded by Dr. Gary K. Michelson. Dr. Michelson is a retired physician who made his fortune in inventing medical devices and patenting those devices. As I mentioned, he's retired from medicine and has now devoted himself to philanthropy. The Michelson 20mm Foundation is one foundation in an umbrella organization called Michelson Philanthropies. Dr. Michelson also supports Animal Welfare Foundation, a medical research foundation, among some of his other philanthropic activities. And actually, the 20mm organization really got its start in the textbook affordability space. Over a decade ago now, Dr. Michelson read a news article about students at Santa Ana College in California who were unable to continue advancing despite their excellent grades, despite their good performance, solely because of the high cost of instructional materials. At the time, he actually started a scholarship where students would be able to access funds for resources. But we quickly realized that that didn't really address the heart of the issue when it came to instructional material costs. And so about 10 years ago or so, Dr. Michelson gave a grant to OpenStax, and that's really what kind of set us on our journey in the open educational resources space, and also really started the Foundation 20mm as a whole. And here's our mission statement, but we really seek to create a more just world and allow everyone to achieve their potential through equitable educational and economic opportunities. And I'm going to talk briefly about some of the ways we do that in our work. So the first thing that I'll mention is the Michelson Institute for Intellectual Property. As I shared earlier, Dr. Michelson made his fortune in inventing devices, patenting those devices. And so he's very passionate about bringing intellectual property education to the masses. He wants to make sure that students, entrepreneurs, inventors have the educational resources that they need to correctly navigate the IP world. We offer a plethora of resources, ebook, actual modules that can be incorporated into courses, and we work with higher education institutions to infuse IP curriculum throughout their classes and programs. One of the other things that the 20mm organization is involved with is impact investing. We do this through Michelson Impact Ventures. And essentially, we are looking to invest in for-profit companies that are mission aligned with what we are looking to do, primarily assisting in the post-secondary journey, as well as workforce development. So I'll briefly touch on three other areas of work that we at the Michelson 20mm Foundation delve into. The first is our digital equity initiative. And here, this really sprung out of COVID with so many people, so many students working from home, realizing that the ability to work from home really is dependent on whether or not you have access to high-speed internet, whether or not you have a device, whether or not you have the digital literacy skills to be able to navigate those spaces. And so in 2020, we launched our digital equity initiative, where we look to bridge the digital divide in the state of California. Our Smart Justice initiative was launched in 2019, and there we look to support individuals who are both currently incarcerated as well as formerly incarcerated, helping them to achieve higher education outcomes. So whether it be college in prison programs or students who are on the outside but have experience with the criminal justice system, maybe they're involved in the Rising Scholars Program within the California Community College system, but we look to help to better outcomes for that population. We also have a focus on workforce development within our Smart Justice initiative. And then the last initiative that I'll mention before we really get into OER is our Student Basic Needs initiative. So there we're looking at things that are impacting a student's ability to be successful within higher education, be it housing, food insecurity, et cetera. And that is obviously a nice kind of segue into another thing that really impacts a student's educational journey and their ability to be successful, and that is instructional materials and the high cost of instructional materials. And Kaylin, I'll turn it over to you to take it over from here and talk a little bit more about our OER initiative.
So our Open Educational Resource Initiative is unsurprisingly focused on increasing the use and accessibility of OER for faculty and students. We know that OER not only is the most affordable option for students because it's almost always free, but it also increases levels of student success. It is incredibly flexible. It allows educators to use culturally relevant materials, and we know they're rated at very high quality. We also know that OER doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is part of a broader textbooks and instructional materials landscape. And we do work also in trying to make sure that that landscape works for students and educators, especially since students are particularly vulnerable in this space. So we want to create a more affordable and accessible course material landscape. And we think that open educational resources are really the best way to do that. So a little bit about the Spark Grant program. We are looking to fund highly impactful initiatives that might not be possible if you have to wait through a traditional grant cycle with the traditional decision timelines. We are looking for things that are innovative or even just-in-time grant making for urgent needs in the community that we see coming up, and that are also in alignment with our focus areas, which I'm going to get into in a minute. We also want to get back to you on a pretty quick timeline. So all decisions on applications are going to be within 6 weeks of our calls for proposals closing. And then that call for proposals is going to open May 30th and close June 13th. And then a little bit about the program itself. So we are looking for US-based nonprofits, and we are looking for programs that impact California in some way. So if a program's work would not impact California, it would not be eligible for this opportunity. We're also looking to find efforts that are scalable and could have an impact across the state. We know that the creation of OER content is an ongoing desire and need. Right now, we are looking to leverage our funding to affect broader systematic change and are not going to be funding projects that are exclusively to create OER content at this time. And then given everything going on, given the size, the scope, and the complexity of these issues, if a program has multiple streams of funding or multiple organizations that are supporting it, that would not make you ineligible. We think that that's great. And ideally would love to see programs that could even get funding from different groups in the future.
And then two things that I'll just quickly mention. While we say, nonprofits are eligible, obviously we're aware that schools often have foundations associated with them. So generally we'll use those as vehicles to fund a project if it's based at a particular institution. One of the questions that often comes up in these conversations is how many grants do we award out of the Spark grant cycle? Generally, we see about 3 to 5 grants per cycle distributed. The number of proposals that we receive really ranges. In full transparency, OER was last year on the low side, but I would say generally we receive about somewhere in the 30 to 35 range of proposals for our initiatives.
And here's a little bit about how we are thinking about the evaluation. So one, we want to see if it checks that baseline criteria that I just laid out. And then also, does it fit within the focus areas that we are going to talk about in just a second? Next, we want to see kind of the potential impact of the grant. Are we looking for things that can kind of leverage more systematic change usually? And then the measurability of that impact. Is this something also that has a long tail? Does it have organizational sustainability? And then is this a project that could be scaled up? So a little bit more about the baseline criteria. One, our grant ask is up to $25K. We would want something that kind of covers a specific and contained milestone. So for example, we are going to release a report, or we are going to hold this event, or we want to create this project outline. So these are like inflection points, or could open up a new foothold with a partner, something that could lead to something larger. That's kind of where we get the name Spark, is we're looking for something that sparks something big or new or impactful. And then some of the restrictions that wouldn't fall into that category are things like general operating expenses, things like rent, or general working capital.
And then I'll also just jump in quickly to say, I know one question that we often get in these webinars is around allocation of staff time. That is something that certainly would be eligible for Spark grants. So if you're saying, we're going to utilize this grant to allocate X number of hours for an individual or X number of hours for a grad student to work on this project, that would be something that would be allowable.
So let's talk a little bit about what the focus areas are this time around. So one, a couple of years ago, the state of California invested $115 million in the zero textbook cost degree program with the California community colleges. We know that these funds are probably not going to go towards all of the things that could that people would love to see, right? That's how state dollars work. So we are looking for things that help build capacity, whether it's professional development, scaling, OER marketing, that can kind of make the most of this historic opportunity. And I'll have a couple of examples of past projects we funded that fall into this category in a minute. Also, we are interested in research showing how OER impacts students, especially students from marginalized groups, whether this is BIPOC students, student parents, unhoused students, or tribal communities. We are interested in how OER impacts the decisions students make, their completion rates and grades, and also their lives outside of school. A couple more, we are interested in research and public education around automatic textbook billing, often called inclusive access or even equitable access, with a focus on student experience and consumer protection. We want to understand how prevalent and what different types of automatic textbook billing are going on in the state of California, whether it is in any of the 3 public higher education systems. Also, We know that policymakers very often have been out of school for a long time. And so when they picture textbook affordability, they're often picturing like a physical textbook that students buy at the store and sell back at the end of the year. We know that things have changed a lot, and we know that they've changed very rapidly. So educating policymakers at the state, system, or federal level that have an outdated understanding of the course material landscape could be very important. And public education is going to be needed to bring people up to speed on what it looks like right now. And we're also interested in research around student data protection in the instructional material landscape. Like I said, things have changed a lot. Probably don't need to tell you all that. So we know that students are often required to buy things that collect or use their data in order to participate in the courses that they are registered for. And we'd like to better understand that.
It helps if I mute myself. Thanks, Caitlin. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the other kind of dimensions that we evaluate. Caitlin highlighted them briefly, but we're very interested in seeing the potential impact of the grant. So, how many individuals will you all be impacting with this work? What is the best case scenario? What is the worst case scenario? What is likelihood for success? How are you all measuring that impact? That's something that we're really interested in. So we ask grantees to provide metrics for how they're going to measure it. We also ask grantees to provide timelines for what their project is going to be. I would say generally we see projects that span a 6 to 12-month effort. Again, with $25,000, you're not generally seeing a multi-year project, unless, of course, those dollars are being kind of combined with other funds for a larger project. On the very tail end, we sometimes see grants that are about 18 months or so, but generally anything beyond that just kind of isn't a fit for what we're looking for this Spark grant vehicle. We're interested in long-term organizational sustainability and sustainability of the project. So as you apply, we'll be asking around, who are your current team? Why are you all the best individuals to be executing this project? Who are the partners that you'll be working with? What is your current revenue streams? How are you funded? Do you have grants previously? Things along those lines. And then lastly, we're really interested in scalability of the project. So knowing that $25,000 can exceed something, we're interested in what is the long-term vision for this. Is it a research paper that you all feel can spur policy change later on down the line? Is it a pilot project that you want to test out, which could be replicated across multiple campuses? All of those types of things are what we'd be interested in learning as you're applying for a grant. So I'm going to shift slightly and talk about sort of the actual process of applying. So our call for proposals will be open on May 30th. If you go to our Spark Grants website, and I just dropped the link in the chat, you'll see a submit a proposal button in advance of May 30th. That button is not there right now, but it will be. However, you will see on our webpage currently PDF copies of the LOI as well as the full application. So how our process works is we ask organizations to submit a letter of interest. Again, the earliest you'd be able to submit that is May 30th. And from there, we review those LOIs on an ongoing basis. If we review an LOI and we are interested and want to learn more, we will send that organization a full application. However, we wanted to provide you with both of those in advance, so that way if you wanted to start working on those now, you're certainly able to. In addition to what you'll see on the PDF of the full application on our website, we also will ask specific questions based on your LOI. So as the grant committee reviews, If they want to learn more about something that you specifically shared in the LOI, they will kind of pose that in the application. The LOI we try to make as low barrier as possible. So hopefully it's not overly cumbersome or time burdening. Really the meat and potatoes of it is a 500-word abstract as to what your project will be. And then the vast majority of it is just demographic information about the makeup of your staff, the makeup of your leadership, the makeup of the populations that you serve. I would certainly encourage organizations to apply early. Again, we're kind of reviewing on an ongoing basis. And when you do apply, you will receive a copy of that application. And we utilize a grant management platform called Submittable. So when you do go to our website and you click that submit a proposal button, which will be available at the end of this month, you'll actually create an account in Submittable. And then that's how you will submit. That's how you'll be notified of an invite for an application. That's how you'll submit the application. And then if you are selected as a grantee, your reporting will actually occur through Submittable as well. One thing that I just wanted to highlight, especially if you are at an educational institution, we've had instances in the past where individuals have told us they are not getting email notifications from Submittable. So we always encourage people to safe list Submittable in their email client. I just dropped a link in the chat as to how you would go about doing that. You will also be reminded of this as you're submitting your LOI. There'll be a checkbox within the LOI sort of reminding you. If you have any technical issues with the Submittable platform, the best way to sort of get those addressed is to email support@submittable.com. Feel free to copy us as well, but we kind of won't have an answer if there's like a tech issue or an issue with the platform that you're experiencing on your end. That would be our partners at Submittable. And Keelan, I think I'll turn it back over to you and you can talk a little bit about who's involved in our evaluation process.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about the Spark Grant Committee. So first, I'm on the committee, which should not be surprising, as is Ryan. But also joining us will be Myra Lombera, the Chief Operating Officer at 20 Million Minds, and Phil Kem, the CEO of 20 Million Minds Foundation. And then this will be our second year with the Spark Grant Community Advisors. We know that the folks that have kind of the best eyes on what is going on in the community are from the community. So we have started pulling in community members to help us craft our focus areas and to give us feedback on the grants. So the Spark Grant Community Advisors this year include Pamela Haynes, she is on the California Community College Board of Directors, Dr. Jerry Hanley, the Executive Director of Merlot and Skills Commons at CSULB, Daniela Añez Cortez Bravo, she is a UCLA student and an outgoing USAC representative at UCLA in the Academic Affairs seat. And then Dr. Christina Moon, a professor at Shibo College and an author of an OER textbook. So a little bit about the evaluation process. So after the LOI is submitted, the grant committee will do an initial assessment. We'll let you know within 6 business days if your proposal is going to move to the next stage in the process. Proposals that advance past the LOI will fill out a full application. So full applications will be assessed, and finalists will be reviewed by the Spark Grant Community Advisors. We may schedule a follow-up call after that point to ask some follow-up questions and to get additional information. And then you will be notified of the grant committee's decision within 6 weeks of the call for proposals closing. We have a timeline coming up next, which was helpful. So LOI is received. It is either rejected or move forward. The full application is completed. It's reviewed by the Spark Grant community advisors. A finalist call happens, and then a final decision is made, all within 6 weeks. So a little bit about some of the past awardees, which I think kind of helps create a picture of what we're talking about when we kind of go through those, whether it's the focus areas or the things we're looking for. So a couple of years ago, the U.S. Public Interest Research Group's Education Fund won a Spark Grant. They are an independent, nonpartisan group that stands up to powerful special interests in support of consumers. And they used the Spark Grant to create automatic textbook billing report, which dove into the contracts between institutions and companies that are doing these automatic textbook billing contracts and kind of dug in to find what's in these. It went on to be a very influential report. It was cited in a class action lawsuit from students and some independent booksellers, and was really kind of the first look at the content of the contracts themselves. And yeah, it's still pretty widely referenced. Spark, which is a nonprofit advocacy organization that supports systems for research and education that are open by default and equitable by design, worked with a host of community organizations to create inclusiveaccess.org, which is a resource for students, educators, and administrators to get a more full picture of the impacts of automatic textbook billing. It contains resources, a contract library, FAQs, whether you are a student who's like, I'm in a class that is automatically billing me, or I think this is something our campus is doing, or an administrator that's trying to get the best deal possible for their campus. And then the next two kind of really highlight projects that built capacity to make the most of the zero textbook cost funding that the state is doing with the California community colleges. Actually, I see some really familiar names in the participant list that I met through this project. So Creative Commons is a nonprofit organization that helps overcome legal obstacles to the sharing of knowledge. A lot of open educational resources, I would even say most, are written and released with a Creative Commons license. So our grant funded a week-long Creative Commons certification bootcamp in the Bay Area. And we had 12 educators from primarily the Bay Area join us and earn a Creative Commons certificate. And we did this in partnership with the Academic Senate's Open Educational Resource Initiative. And those educators have gone on to do really exciting projects together and are now hubs of information on their own campuses for people trying to understand the licenses that underpin OER. And then the American Association of Colleges and Universities is a membership organization that promotes excellence in liberal education, and they host a series of institutes over the course of the year in different subjects, one of which being open educational resources. So we funded 5 different California community colleges to participate in the 2002 cohort of the OER Institute, where they received mentorship, professional development, and community support to develop local OER plans. And then the Hewlett Foundation, after the outpouring of interest, actually funded additional colleges to go through the AAC&U Institute, which shows that if other sources of funding can be brought in, it's definitely not a disqualifying factor. It's actually something we're quite excited about.
Awesome, thanks, Kalen. And I just wanted to briefly highlight some non-OER Spark grants that have been awarded across our other initiatives, because again, I think it hopefully provides a bit more color as to the types of projects that we're potentially looking to fund. So the first I'll mention is Unite LA. Unite LA launched with our funding as well as other dollars coming in the Los Angeles Digital Equity Action League, or LA DEAL, which is a regional consortium focused on eliminating the digital divide. So this is a really good example of our dollars being combined with other dollars to scale up a new project. And this has been really great to see the work that LA Deal has done in terms of advocating for low-cost broadband, really closing access issues for vulnerable populations across the Los Angeles area. Another one that I'll highlight, which comes out of our Smart Justice program, is the Forestry and Fire Recruitment Program, or FFRP. This organization works with individuals both inside of prison as well as outside of prison to give them skills to work in wildfire suppression and wildfire prevention fields. If you aren't aware, a lot of work being done to prevent wildfires are done by individuals who are incarcerated, but they often face barriers upon release in terms of getting into those career professions. So we supported FFRP to expand their work into the Bay Area. So again, this is an example of work that was already being done, and they were looking to grow and catalyze that work. Impact Justice is another organization that we've supported through our Spark Grant process. They would fall under our Smart Justice initiative. A couple of years ago, they launched the California Justice Leaders Program. It is an AmeriCorps type program specifically involved for young adults who have been justice involved. Again, this was an example of our dollars being combined with other dollars to launch this program. It's been extremely successful. We actually just at the end of last year awarded them another grant because they now have over 100 alumni of this program, and they're looking to build a alumni network and to formalize offerings, professional development opportunities, et cetera, for their alumni. And we'll see that from time to time where we, fund a Spark grant and then are able to kind of continue to work and support that organization. Another one under our Smart Justice initiative is UCI Lifted. UCI Lifted is the first of its kind because it is a UC program that is granting bachelor degrees in a state prison, which is kind of the first UC to do that. So this is a great example of two things. One, again, our dollars being combined with other dollars, but two, a sort of proof of concept or pilot program. Our hope is that UCI Lifted can sort of build out a model and build out a record for success so that other prisons across the state will work with UCs, and UCs will be more inclined to work with them and launch additional degree granting programs on the inside. And then one grant that I just wanted to highlight out of our Student Basic Needs Initiative is a grant that we gave to Cal State Long Beach. We supported their development of a best practice for family-friendly campuses, particularly through the Pregnant and Parenting Students Initiative. So CSULB created materials, worked to distribute those materials across the CSU system. So again, it's sort of showing what we're doing here and hoping that we can influence other campuses to take up these best practices. This grant also, for us as an organization, really was our first foot in the door when it came to thinking about pregnant and parenting students. We have since launched our Pregnant and Parenting Students project, where we have a whole arm of our work under our Student Basic Needs Initiative that's specifically focused on this population. So what we'll often see is these Spark grants sort of for us seeding new areas of work that we will grow and expand in as a foundation. So that is sort of the heart of what we wanted to share with you today in terms of information. I do see a few questions in the Q&A, so I think we'll turn our attention towards those. If you have any specific questions, please feel free to reach out to Kaylin or myself. Kaylin is certainly the sort of expert when it comes to all things OER, and also has the best sense of what would fit under our focus areas. We are always willing and open to hop on a quick 30-minute conversation with organizations. So if you're thinking, hey, I'm not quite sure if this is a fit or not, happy to chat, also happy to respond to an email. So if you're saying, hey, here's a quick paragraph on what our idea is, can you tell us if we're sort of barking up the right tree? I'm more than happy to provide that feedback. I always want to make sure that people are working efficiently. So if we can quickly say to you, oh, I'm not sure that is quite a fit for us right now, that would save you time and energy of completing that LOI. Conversely, if it is something that we're interested in, we might be able to provide some feedback to say, yes, this is something that we think the grant committee would be interested in. Please feel free, make sure you include information, X, Y, and Z, so that we have a full picture of sort of what you're looking to propose. And with that, I'll pop over to the Q&A. So Diane said, I work at a large institution with several colleges and departments. Can both our colleges and departments apply separately? Yes, so we have in circumstances seen instances where different departments across a large campus or across maybe a system would apply. I think if those applications are related in any way, if it's the same type of project or you're working on the same thing, I would suggest maybe combining forces and sort of working together. But Diana, if you want to shoot us a little bit more information via email, we can maybe give a more specific answer for your case. Rachel asks, does the innovation have to apply within higher education, or could it target other adult learner populations like adult foundational education, workforce development / justice system? Kaylin, I might turn this over to you to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I would be very curious to learn more basically about something like this. I think when it comes to workforce development or foundational education, maybe less so. I'm always interested in finding ways to work across program areas. So this is definitely a case where, I would love to hear a little bit more about what you were thinking. But primarily we are looking for things that are within the realm of higher education. And I just do want to echo, I'm very happy to have a sit down 30-minute conversation with folks. I'm pretty accessible.
Awesome. Ryan Edwards asks, would building an add-on software application apply? Not knowing the specifics, I would say yes. Like it wouldn't be disqualified, but I think, the key would be sort of where it fits within the focus areas that we've identified. So if this add-on software is furthering one of those focus areas, certainly. And again, this might be something where if you want to shoot us an email with a bit more of the specifics, we could probably provide a bit more of a nuanced response.
Yes, especially if it's for a nonprofit, coming from a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm. Will asks, projects involving advocacy for the implementation of OER's ZTC degree program, are they eligible? Yes, definitely. We love advocacy type programs. We are limited when it comes to funding lobbying activities. But seeing as how the ZTC program has already been passed into law, and this is more about like implementation of it, that would not apply here. So certainly would be interested. Oh, and Ryan, I apologize. I see your follow-up here, or enhanced integration into an existing system. Yeah, Ryan Edwards, I would just encourage you to shoot us an email and we can maybe answer a bit more concretely about what you're thinking. Great, questions are coming in fast and furious. I love it. Deborah asks, what are you looking for in the LOI? Do you have examples on your website? So we do have the copy of the LOI on our website available right now. So you should be able to download that, and you can see specifically what we're looking for. I think in this presentation, and we'll send out this deck in an email following today's call, but those dimensions of evaluation, I think are really what we're looking to hit. And what we'd be interested in learning from an LOI. But if you have questions, Deborah, after reviewing that LOI, definitely feel free to shoot them our way. There was a question in the chat from Margaret. Can you clarify scalable solutions? So I think when we say scalable, what we're looking for is something that will not just have an impact on one campus or one class or one group of 50 students or something like that. Well, that is certainly valuable and important for our funding vehicle in the Spark Grant process. We're really looking for things that will transcend that particular campus. So again, the best example that I think I could probably point to is a pilot program type thing, right? So yes, this is occurring on one particular campus, but we want to prove out this model on this campus so that we can then advocate for other campuses to be adopting said model, said practice, etc. The other thing that we often see as scalable are things that relate to policy and research. And I think Kaylin highlighted this in the previous examples that they shared. US PIRG report. That was a research report, but that research report wasn't just a sort of, sit on a table and people didn't really act on it. It gave people actionable steps and solutions that they could take to address automatic textbook billing. And it also, I think, highlighted the issue and allowed for sort of a larger conversation in the space to occur. Research paper was cited in legislation, lawsuits, et cetera, et cetera. So Kaylin, I don't know if there's anything else that comes to your mind when we talk scalability.
I think you covered it really well. I also think that there are, so I think that this one might also answer another question that's in the chat. One of the previous grants was to Compton College for the planning process to get to a 100% OER campus. So the grant covered the creation of that plan and the formation of that group with the idea that we're going to make a plan and that's going to get us to some bigger picture. And then that's another example, but I think, Ryan, that you covered it really well. And then just kind of also going back to Sarah's question, we did highlight some organizations, but we have also funded directly projects within colleges. So for an individual that is doing a research project, it would probably make more sense to go through your college's foundation or for us to figure something out, but that would not make you ineligible if you are looking to do research through your institution.
Definitely. And again, feel free to email us. We don't want the red tape or whatever to get in the way of something that could be amazing that we would really want to support. Anonymous attendee, do you know what about other upcoming Spark Grants? Yes, so we do our Spark Grant cycles on quarterly basis. In Q3 of 2023, we will focus on our Student Basic Needs Initiative. And then in Q4 of 2023, we will focus on our Smart Justice Initiative. And then in Q1 of 2024 will be our Digital Equity Initiative. And then it sort of cycles through across those four. Sydney asks, we are a national nonprofit but have support resources / support adult students in California. Would a California specific project be eligible? Yes, certainly. And I think, when we say we want your work to impact Californians, that we interpret broadly. And I think, inclusiveaccess.org is probably a good example of that. It's a website that, Californians can access, they can research, it'll be impactful, but it'll also be impactful beyond that. I think if there was something where it's hey, we are in New York State and we want to run a pilot program around X, Y, and Z, that would be something where we would have a bit more of a challenging time to sort of see how it would impact Californians. Maybe, farther down the line it would, but it wouldn't have that direct impact that I think we're looking to achieve. So hopefully that answers that question. Would an openly licensed webinar series featuring discussions on OER efficiency from different stakeholder groups be something you're interested in funding? Kaylin, I'll defer this one over to you.
So it's something I would like to learn more about, but I will say that personally, I see a lot of folks that are like, I want to make a toolkit. I want to make resources that other people can use. And I think that's really admirable. And I've seen people do a lot of really great work on that. I think I am very interested in projects that get people to use the resources that exist. I really want to see people using the toolkits that exist and like putting them into action. So I'd love to learn more about what you're thinking, but I'm very action oriented in the things that I'm most interested in. And then I saw something in the chat from Estella. Can receive multiple awards, apply each quarter. So for example, I think, for example, if you're a college that is doing work in OER and doing work in student basic needs, and you apply for your OER project for this grant cycle, and then apply for the different student basic needs project during the student basic needs Spark Grant cycle, I don't see that as holding someone back. And one of the things is a lot of our program areas are pretty different from one another. We have not yet run into someone who has found a way to unite those and has applied for funding for the same project in multiple different categories.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But we have had organizations where we funded in our different initiatives. The one that jumps to mind for me, PPIC, I can't remember, Public Policy Institute of California. I hope I got that right. But we funded them to do research in and around digital equity, and we recently funded them to do research in the smart justice space. I will say if we were to fund an organization in this cycle for OER, and I would say this is not like a school type thing. Let's say it's a nonprofit, right? Oh, we want to do work in OER. We're funding this project. If it's a newer relationship or we're not as familiar with you all as an organization, we might wait to sort of see how that first grant plays out before we were to make a decision on a second grant. It really depends on the circumstance and sort of the timelines and things like that, but certainly would not be ineligible, and we would always be open to a conversation around, hey, does it make sense for us to apply for this cycle as well? So it looks like we just got one more. Sarah asks, if funding is awarded, when does the project need to start? The turnaround time on your end is pretty fast, which is appreciated. Would January 2024 be okay? I don't think it would not. Yes, I think it would not be disqualifying or anything like that. I think we do seek to fund timely projects. So I guess what I would say is, if there are equal projects in our kind of like evaluation, and one is, we need these funds to start this project in August or July or whatever, and then we need funds to start this project in January, we might be more inclined to award something. But I would say January doesn't like ping in my brain like, wow, that's so far away. So I would encourage you, that would not be disqualifying.
And again, I really hope having a 30-minute conversation, I think, could also help with some of these clarifying, because I know that it's very difficult to get the answer to something very specific, like crunched down for a Q&A. So I think that, I'm very open to having conversations over the course of between now and when the grant cycle really kicks off. And I'd be really excited to kind of hear y'all's fleshed out ideas a little bit, not like a pitch, but like hey, this is what we're thinking. Does this make sense? And I'm very open to that, because I do think that, one of the things is it might be like, well, one of the things I could do is say, I think what you just said seems like a really cool idea. If you tweaked it in X, Y, and Z way, it could make it a stronger fit for this grant, or something like that.
Yeah, I'll also add on to that, sometimes we see things that are not necessarily good fits for us, but maybe, there is a sister foundation or an organization that we're aware of that we're like, wow, these people like might be really interested in the work that you're doing. So we could sort of connect the dots there for you all. Also realizing that, y'all's time is very precious and you're doing amazing work. If a 30-minute call doesn't work for you, email as well. We certainly will be able, if you want to shoot us a paragraph or so about what you're thinking, we can respond in writing. So we really want to make it as easy for you all as possible. Awesome. Well, I think we did it, Callan. We answered all the questions that everyone had ever. But really appreciate everyone's time today. Can't thank you enough. We look forward to reviewing your proposals. And again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to either Callan or myself. Thanks so much. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you. Have a great day.